I wake up with a stiff neck. I get a headache after stress. Coincidence? Seth says, absolutely not. And that random urge to call my mom I ignored. Apparently, that was my soul texting.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, such a radical way to look at your morning, right?
Yeah.
We usually just brush off those little physical complaints or, random nudges as well as just the background noise of being human.
Right, totally. Just part of
Right.
the deal.
Exactly. But when you dive into the nature of personal reality, and specifically looking at chapters 5, 6, and 7 today, that background noise is actually the main broadcast. I really want to read this exact quote from chapter 6 right out of the gate because it just sets the stakes for everything we're about to discuss.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so it says, the cells of your body react to each thought you think. And then building right on top of that, in chapter 7, you get this, impulses are the voice of the inner self, directing you towards your greatest fulfillment.
Wow. Okay, let's slow down and look at what those two statements actually mean when you put them together. Because, I mean, on one hand, we have the idea that my cells are somehow like eavesdropping on my internal monologue.
Eavesdropping, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Right. And on the other, we have this idea that random urges are actually this internal navigation system
Hmm.
because we are so conditioned to think of our bodies as just, well, hardware, biological vehicles.
Yep. Just a machine carrying us around.
Like a car. You drive it around, occasionally a part wears out, you take it to a doctor who essentially acts as a mechanic. They swap out a part or give you some oil in the form of a pill, and you just keep driving.
Right. The whole biomedical mechanic model.
Exactly. But this material is suggesting the car is basically rebuilding itself from the inside out, literally second by second, based entirely on the driver's mood.
It is. And, well, that mechanical view of the body is exactly what the source text is really trying to dismantle here. I mean, Descartes really did a number on us centuries ago by separating the mind and the body.
Oh, yeah. The whole mind-body split.
Yeah, and modern medicine largely inherited that exact split. We tend to treat the mind as this, ethereal, invisible thing floating around in the skull, and the body as just a meat suit that sometimes misbehaves.
A misbehaving meat suit, yeah.
But the texts we're looking at today urge us to adopt a completely different scientific and really spiritual paradigm. So for this deep dive, the mission is pretty clear. Today, you are going to learn how to actually read your body's messages.
That sounds incredibly useful, honestly.
It's life-changing. We're going to learn how to trust that inner GPS. And to do that, we're exploring the nature of personal reality, specifically those chapters I mentioned, along with some fascinating biographical context from the Seth material by Jane Roberts. Because we have to understand the body not as a machine, but as a living, hyper-responsive sculpture of belief.
A sculpture of belief. That is, it's a beautiful phrase, but let's get into the actual mechanics of it. Because how does a belief, which feels like an invisible, abstract concept to me, turn into a literal physical sculpture?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people hear your thoughts create your reality, and they picture some kind of magical thinking, like, oh, if I just think really hard about $1 million,
Yeah.
poof, it appears on my desk.
Right, the secret style manifestation stuff. But Seth's diagnosis of the physical form in chapter 5 is much, much more systemic than that.
So how does it actually work then?
Well, it's entirely systemic. To grasp this, you have to imagine that your thoughts are not just these abstract clouds of philosophy floating around in your head. The text insists that thoughts are actual electromagnetic realities.
Wait, electromagnetic? Like that they have energy?
Exactly. They have actual physical weight, energy, and validity. The conscious mind, which is the part of you that is, thinking, analyzing, assessing your physical environment right now, it feeds its beliefs and expectations down to what the text calls the inner self.
Okay, wait, I want to make sure I'm tracking the hierarchy here. So the conscious mind is like the scout, right? Looking around, forming conclusions about the world, like the world is dangerous, or my job is overwhelming, or I am safe.
Yes, perfectly said. It's assessing the field.
And then it passes those conclusions, those reports, down to the inner self.
That's a great way to look at it. The conscious mind is basically the director pointing the camera. The inner self is the vast, subconscious, creative engine behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And here's where the mechanics come in. The inner self translates those deeply held beliefs into physical form.
It literally builds it.
Yes. It literally organizes the atoms and molecules that compose your cells to reflect the instructions it was given by the conscious mind. It creates what the text calls a living gestalt of responsive flesh.
Gestalt is one of those words that gets, thrown around in psychology classes, but what does it actually mean here in the context of, like, flesh and bone?
Well, in this context, a gestalt means a whole that is more than the sum of its parts. Your body isn't just a random collection of 50 trillion isolated cells just, bumping into each other in the dark.
Right, it's not just a sack of cells.
Far from it. It is a highly organized, cooperative consciousness. The texts in Chapter 6 say the cells themselves actually possess a precognitive comprehension.
Wait, precognitive, like they know what's going to happen.
More like they have an innate, deep awareness. They are aware, and they are working together constantly to form the physical image of what you believe yourself to be, which means that your body's condition at any given moment is a perfect, flawless mirror of your subjective state.
Man, this is where the rubber meets the road, I feel like. Because if the body is a living sculpture, then specific physical issues aren't just random bad luck.
No, they're not random at all.
They are literal physical materializations of specific mental states. So let's translate this into everyday terms for the listener, because I think that's where it clicks. Say you have chronic shoulder tension.
Oh, yeah. Very common.
Right, that tight, grinding pain in your upper back and neck that so many of us get by Friday afternoon. Most people just say, oh, I slept wrong, or I've been hunched over my laptop too long.
But according to Chapter 5, that physical hardening is often manifesting a very specific belief. It's the belief that you're literally carrying too much.
Wow. So the physical posture is mimicking the psychological burden.
Precisely. You feel like you are shouldering a massive responsibility, perhaps all alone. You believe the weight of your family or your career is resting entirely on your shoulders. So your body, being that loyal, cooperative gestalt we talked about, it obediently hardens its muscles to help you carry the invisible weight you believe is there.
That is wild. It takes your metaphor and makes it completely literal.
It does. Another incredibly common example the text provides is stomach issues. Say someone develops, an ulcer or just chronic indigestion.
Yeah, and we usually blame, like, spicy food or just general stress.
Right. But the material suggests an ulcer can be a literal manifestation of a situation you can't stomach.
Oh, man. Can't stomach. It's baked right into our language.
It really is. It represents a reality that you are refusing to digest mentally. Maybe it's a toxic work environment or a failing relationship or even a truth about yourself that you just don't want to look at.
So because you won't process it emotionally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because your conscious mind refuses to process and digest the emotional reality of that situation. The energy of that unfaced problem has to go somewhere. The body gives you a corporeal replica of your mental blockage. It physically creates a corresponding inability to digest in your literal stomach.
Okay, I understand the logic. I really do. But I have a major, major problem with the implications of this.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, because it's something I think anyone listening to this deep dive would struggle with. If the body is a sculpture shaped by my thoughts, and my cells are organizing themselves based on my beliefs, does that mean every illness, every ache, every chronic pain is my fault?
Yeah, the blame question. It always comes up.
Because if someone gets a cold, or worse, if they develop a severe chronic illness, are they supposed to just sit there and feel this immense guilt, like, oh, my bad thoughts broke my body? Because that feels incredibly victim-blaming.
It is the absolute most vital question you could ask, and it is exactly where people often misinterpret this kind of material. The distinction you have to make, and the text is very, very clear on this, is separating the concept of creation from the concept of blame.
Okay, how do we separate those? Because they feel linked.
Well, guilt and blame are human moralistic constructs. The inner self doesn't operate on morality. It operates on pure creative mechanics. The body is acting as a loyal servant expressing your inner state. It is never, ever punishing you.
But if I created the illness with my thoughts, how's that not a punishment for my own negative thinking?
Because the illness isn't an outside invader, and it isn't divine retribution for being a flawed, negative person. Think about a dashboard light in your car.
Okay, like the check engine light.
Exactly. When the check engine light comes on, the car isn't angry at you. It isn't punishing you for driving poorly. It's acting as an intimate biofeedback system. It's communicating. It's saying, hey, there is a misalignment under the hood that you can't see with your conscious mind, so I am going to show you a brightly colored light that you can see.
Oh, I see. So the physical symptom is literally the check engine light.
Yes. When you experience physical symptoms, your body is faithfully manifesting your held beliefs so that they become visible and undeniable to you in the physical world.
So it's trying to get my attention.
Right. If you are ignoring a massive emotional burden and your body creates an ulcer, the body is actually doing you a favor. It is pulling the invisible problem into the physical world so you are finally forced to address it. It is an act of profound, unconditional cooperation.
Wow. Unconditional cooperation.
Yeah, the cells are so loyal to your conscious beliefs that they will literally form an illness just to show you what you were doing to yourself psychologically.
A loyal servant. That completely flips the script on how we talk about disease, because the standard language is all about warfare, right?
Yes, the language of fighting.
Yeah, we say things like, I have to fight this cold, or she lost her battle with the disease. We treat the body as this battlefield where we are constantly under attack by rogue cells or outside invaders.
But if the body is a loyal servant, it isn't betraying you at all. It's actually agreeing with you so intensely that it's willing to suffer to show you the shape of your own mind.
That is so profound. And I guess when you stop fighting the body and start actually listening to it, the resistance drops.
Exactly. You move from a state of warfare to a state of inquiry. You could look at the symptom and ask, okay, what deeply held belief is this reflecting right now?
Which naturally leads us to the next logical problem. Because if physical symptoms are the body's last resort, like the blaring red check engine light when things have already broken down, how does the inner self try to communicate its needs before we get sick? Like, what's the early warning system?
And that brings us right back to Chapter 7. The primary communication network of the inner self, long before things materialize as pain or illness, is impulses.
Impulses. Okay. Now, we need to spend some time here because society has a very, very complicated relationship with impulses.
We really do. We're terrified of them.
Right. We are generally taught from a very young age that our impulses are inherently dangerous. You know, you have to be logical, you have to be rational, you have to plan things out. The prevailing belief is that if we all just followed our random impulses, civilization would collapse into, like, anarchy and violence.
Complete chaos.
Yeah. We view the spontaneous self as something that needs to be caged and trained like a wild animal.
And the source material argues that this specific societal belief, this deep fear of our own spontaneity, is actually the root cause of massive psychological and physical illness.
Really? Just the fear of spontaneity itself?
Yes, because it creates a profound schism within the self. We have to learn to decode impulses because the text draws a really important distinction here between natural impulses and destructive impulses.
Let's break that down then, because I think people definitely confuse the two. What does a natural impulse actually feel like?
According to the text, a natural impulse feels like a quiet, persistent nudge. It has a graceful quality to it. It's not loud. It might be the sudden, gentle urge to take a different route home from work, even though it's, 5 minutes longer.
Right. Just a random thought to turn left instead of right.
Exactly. Or it might be the thought to call a specific friend out of the blue for no logical reason. Or it could be as simple as the urge to lay down and rest your body when your schedule says you should keep working.
So they don't feel frantic at all.
Not at all. They feel like a quiet knowing. This is the inner self safely and wisely guiding you toward what the material calls your value fulfillment, basically the unfolding of your highest potential.
Value fulfillment, I like that.
Yeah, the material even states that molecules and cells themselves operate on these exact natural impulses. It is the fundamental language of life. It's how a flower knows when to open and how a cell knows when to divide.
Okay, but then we have the other side of the coin, right? Destructive impulses. And these are the ones that terrify us. The urge to yell at someone, the urge to break something, that sudden spike of chaotic, fearful, or even violent energy.
Right, the stuff that makes us lock up our impulses.
Yeah. So if the inner self is inherently good and driving us toward value fulfillment, where do these terrifying, destructive urges even come from?
This is, honestly, one of the most brilliant psychological insights in the text.
Yeah.
Those destructive impulses are not your natural state at all. They usually only arise because your natural impulses have been constantly denied, judged, or repressed over a long period of time.
Oh, wow. So they are literally a byproduct of suppression.
Exactly. Because you cannot destroy energy.
Yeah.
It's a law of physics. So if your inner self gives you a gentle, natural impulse to rest, and your conscious mind says, no, resting is lazy, I have to work, that energy doesn't just vanish into thin air. It dams up.
It gets stored somewhere.
Yes. If you get a quiet impulse to express a boundary, and you suppress it but you want to be polite, that energy collects behind the dam. Over time, as you repeatedly ignore the quiet nudges, the pressure builds and builds. Eventually, that natural energy distorts and it explodes.
It's like water in a pipe. If it's flowing naturally, it's life-giving. It waters the garden. But if you cap the pipe, the pressure builds until the pipe bursts, and then you have a flood that destroys the house.
That is a perfect analogy. And then when the flood happens, society points to the destruction and says, see, this is why you can't trust water. This is why you must suppress your impulses.
Oh, man. It's a tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy.
It really is.
Huh.
Seth defines aggression not as violence, but simply as forceful, creative action, like a flower bursting through the soil. But when we repress that natural creative aggression, it ferments into destructive, chaotic urges.
So the takeaway here is profound. Learning to tell the difference between the quiet nudge and the pressurized explosion is the actual key to inner harmony. Because if we want to avoid those terrifying, dammed-up explosions of repressed energy, we have to stop ignoring the quiet nudges. Following small, natural impulses is how we rebuild vital trust with the inner self. We have to prove to our inner self that we are listening to the whispers, so it basically doesn't have to shout.
Exactly. When you trust your natural impulses, you are essentially trusting the very nature of the universe that created you. You are aligning your conscious mind with the deeper intelligence of your physical form.
Okay, I want to take all of this high-level theory, the body as a sculpture, the repressed energy, the natural impulses, and bring it crashing down into reality.
Let's do it.
Because it's one thing for us to sit here analyzing text and talking about the inner self conceptually. It's a whole other thing to actually live through the consequences of these mechanics. And I think the most powerful way to understand this is to look at how the author herself handled these concepts.
Oh, absolutely. Jane's story is essential.
Right, because Jane Roberts, the woman who spoke for Seth, who channeled this entire philosophy, wasn't just sitting on a mountaintop radiating perfect health.
No, she absolutely was not. And the biographical context we get from the Seth material is incredibly revealing and honestly quite harrowing to read. If we really want to see how real and powerful this mind-body connection is, we have to look intimately at Jane's journey. Because Jane suffered from severe, crippling rheumatoid arthritis.
And we really need to be clear about the severity here for the listener. We aren't talking about a mild ache in her wrists when it rained. We are talking about profound, debilitating immobility.
Yes, it was extreme.
She spent 31 days in a hospital in Elmira, New York.
Yeah.
Her physical state was just shocking. She weighed 82 pounds. She was dealing with a severely underactive thyroid. She had double vision. She experienced almost total hearing loss at one point, and she was suffering from bed sores. Doctors were literally telling her she would never walk again without massive joint replacement surgeries.
It is a stark, incredibly painful reality. And it seems completely paradoxical, right? Here's a woman bringing through material about how we create our own reality and our own health, while her own body is essentially turning to stone.
Right. People must have been like, if you're creating your reality, why are you doing this?
Exactly. But if we apply the diagnosis we just discussed, Seth's diagnosis of the body as a sculpture of belief, to Jane's specific condition, we see a fascinating and heartbreaking psychological dynamic playing out.
What was the belief her body was sculpting? Because it had to be something massive to cause that level of physical breakdown.
It was. According to the material and the profound analysis of her own condition, Jane's arthritis was her body communicating a deeply held subconscious belief. Specifically, she held a belief that the physical world was a heavy burden, a dangerous place. But even more importantly, she harbored a deep, deep fear of her own massive creative abilities.
That part is so counterintuitive to me. She was producing this world-changing, liberating, philosophical material, but a part of her deeply feared the very power she was channeling. The biographical notes mention her struggle with this idea of a sinful self. Where did that even come from?
Well, it stemmed largely from her early background, particularly the influence of her mother. Jane had been conditioned to believe she was inherently flawed. And as a defense mechanism, she developed this concept of a super-perfect self.
A super-perfect self.
Yeah, it was a rigidly controlled, hyper-intellectual persona that she used to protect herself from criticism. She feared that if she fully embraced her spontaneous, unrestricted power, if she let her true nature out, she might become a fanatic. She feared she might face terrible societal backlash or that she would just lose control entirely.
Wow, so she was terrified of going too far too fast with her abilities. She was afraid of her own momentum.
Exactly. She was afraid of her own speed.
And if we look at the body as the loyal servant, It all makes tragic sense. She literally encased her body in a physical prison to keep her powerful creative energy from running wild.
The body delivered exactly what she demanded. Her inner self, responding to the conscious mind's absolute terror of unchecked motion and spontaneity, provided a failsafe. It restricted her mobility. It literally calcified her joints. Her joints hardened her fear of motion into actual bone.
It's just unbelievable.
It kept her safely in a chair or in a bed where she could produce the intellectual material without the perceived danger of physically running amok in the world.
It's the ultimate manifestation of the dammed up energy we just talked about. She suppressed her natural spontaneous impulses out of fear, and the energy materialized as physical rigidity.
Yeah.
But the incredible thing, and really the proof of this entire philosophy, is the shift that eventually happened.
The shift is what proves the body's resilience, because while she was in that hospital bed in Elmira, Jane was forced to confront the absolute failure of her super-perfect self-image. It had completely crumbled. It hadn't protected her at all. It had nearly killed her. And when she finally began to shift her beliefs, when she started the agonizing emotional work of stopping the fear of her own energy, she actually found areas where her symptoms could ease.
And the physical evidence of that shift was undeniable, wasn't it? Her thyroid, which doctors in the hospital had declared permanently non-functioning, began to show signs of repairing itself.
Yes, it proved that the body isn't a static machine that just breaks and sees broken. The moment she gave her body permission to move, the moment she began to tentatively view her spontaneity as something other than a massive threat, the flesh began to respond and regenerate.
That perfectly illustrates the intense tension between our beliefs and our biology. But there is another vital part of Jane's journey that we absolutely must discuss, and it relates directly back to the concept of impulses.
Yes, the other side of her story.
We talked about how following natural impulses is the mechanism for rebuilding trust with the inner self. Well, Jane's entire legacy, the books, the philosophy, the millions of people impacted, is the direct result of following one deeply irrational impulse.
The nudge that changed the world.
It really was. The biography highlights the moment Jane had a sudden, strange impulse to pick up a pen and write down words that were forming in her head. She was sitting at a Ouija board with her husband, Robert, and she suddenly felt this urge to speak for the energy they were interacting with.
And, I marvel at the vulnerability of that moment because she almost ignored the urge. She was sitting there, and to her logical, rational mind, that super perfect, controlled intellect, we talked about the idea of suddenly speaking aloud for an energy personality essence seemed absolutely crazy.
Totally. It went against every societal norm.
It was embarrassing. Her conscious mind was screaming, "Don't do this. You'll look foolish. This isn't rational."
But she didn't dam up that natural creative impulse. She didn't let the fear of society override the quiet nudge of her inner self. She took the risk. And because she followed that one small, strange nudge, a massive, life-changing body of work was born.
The Seth material exists because Jane Roberts said yes to an impulse.
The lesson for the listener here is just so profound. We often think that to change our lives, we need a grand 10-year plan mapped out by our rational minds. Like we need spreadsheets and goals.
Right. We want the whole map before we take a step.
But small, seemingly insignificant nudges can lead to massive, fulfilling changes if you are just willing to act on them. You do not have to know the final destination to take the first step. Jane didn't sit down knowing she's going to write dozens of books and change the paradigm of personal reality. She just followed the impulse to let the words out in that specific, fleeting moment.
It requires a surrender of the ego's need to control the outcome. And, that brings us to the most important part of this discussion, application.
Yeah.
What does all of this mean for the person listening right now?
Right. Because if you're anything like me, hearing all this theory can feel a little overwhelming. On one hand, it's liberating to know I'm not a victim of a random universe. I like that part.
Of course.
But on the other hand, if my thoughts are constantly sculpting my reality, and I've been ignoring or suppressing my impulses for decades, where do I even begin? How do I start untangling this without panicking that every single negative thought I have is going to instantly give me an ulcer?
That panic is exactly what we want to avoid. Because panic is just another fearful belief for the body to manifest stress.
Oh, great. So don't panic about panicking.
Exactly. But the sources provide incredibly gentle, effective, and practical ways to begin rebuilding this broken trust with your body and your intuition. You don't have to overhaul your entire psyche overnight. We have distilled the advice from these chapters into 2 simple daily techniques. And technique 1 is what we call the body scan thank you.
I really love this one because it directly attacks the adversarial relationship we usually have with our physical forms. Like, let's say my lower back is acting up. Usually my internal monologue is aggressive.
Oh, we're so mean to our bodies.
We are. I'm mad at my back. I'm thinking, stupid back, why are you failing me? You're ruining my day. You're making me feel old. I'm basically treating a part of myself like an enemy combatant.
And by doing that, you are sending aggressive, resentful energy to cells that are actually exhausted from trying to cooperate with your inner beliefs. You are shooting the messenger.
Man, shooting the messenger.
So the first technique completely changes that energetic dynamic.
Yeah.
You are instructed to bring your attention to a specific body part, especially one that is currently causing you pain, tension, or frustration, and silently thank it for its service.
It sounds almost too simple, but the energetic shift is massive. An example script based on the text that you can use right now is, "Thank you, shoulders, for carrying my stress. I'm listening."
I'm listening. That is the magic phrase. In that moment, you are acknowledging the cooperative nature of the cells. You are looking at the dashboard light and saying, I see the light. You are telling the body consciousness, I see that you are materializing my inner burden. You don't have to shout with pain anymore. I hear the message.
It stops the war. The moment you offer gratitude, the resistance drops. This simple act immediately removes the adversarial relationship with physical pain. It allows the blocked energy to finally start moving because the body no longer has to lock up to get your attention. You shift from being a victim of your biology to being a partner with it.
And once you establish that baseline of peace with the body, you can move to technique 2, which is all about intuition and action. We call it the small yes.
This one is about the impulses, right?
Yes. The premise here is to slowly, deliberately rebuild the habit of trust with your inner self. Your conscious mind and your inner self have likely been estranged for years. So you are instructed to follow just one small, harmless impulse today.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here, because this is where my rational mind gets really loud. What if the impulse I follow doesn't lead to a profound Jane Roberts-style revelation?
I mean, if it's just boring.
Yeah. What if I get an impulse to take a different street home, and I do it, and absolutely nothing happens? No burning bush, no sudden realization, no chance encounter with a long-lost friend. Isn't that just a waste of time? Am I just indulging randomness?
That objection is entirely natural, but it comes from a deep misunderstanding of the goal. That is the ego demanding a measurable return on investment. The ego says, if I do X, I must get Y reward immediately. But the goal of the small yes is not to get a specific grand outcome. The goal is the action itself. The goal is simply to rebuild the habit of trust.
So the outcome of the impulse doesn't actually matter.
Not in the beginning, no. You are doing rep work. You are going to the gym. You are proving to your inner self that you are finally willing to listen. Imagine the communication between your inner self and your conscious mind is a rocky, overgrown field. Every time you honor a small, harmless impulse like picking up a book you randomly thought of, stretching your arms when you feel the urge, or calling a friend, you are clearing the debris from that field. You are smoothing out the paved road.
You are telling your inner GPS, okay, the volume is up. I'm following the turn-by-turn directions, even if I don't know why we're turning here.
I love that. Yes. And as you clear that road with small actions, the larger, more profound impulses of your life's purpose will have a clear, unblocked path to reach your conscious mind. To anchor these techniques, I want to read this exact quote from the material because it perfectly summarizes what we're aiming for.
Impulses provide the impetus toward action. They're the creative urges that propel you toward fulfillment.
Propel you toward fulfillment, not push you into danger, not lead you astray. Fulfillment. That is the promise of the text. If you follow the natural impulses, they will invariably lead to your highest value fulfillment. So how do we put this into motion immediately?
We don't want to just leave you with theory. We have a 24-hour mission for you. We want you to take everything we've just discussed and make it physical in your own life today.
This is a firm, actionable exercise for the listener, directly applying the tools from the previous section. Part 1 of the 24-hour mission. Thank 3 body parts today. Do it silently. Acknowledge the cooperative nature of the cells working on your behalf. Whether it's your eyes for reading the screen, your lungs for breathing without you having to manage them, or your aching back for physically manifesting your invisible stress. Just tune in and say, thank you. I'm listening.
And part 2. Follow one small impulse. Don't overthink it. Don't analyze whether it's the perfect impulse or if it's going to change your life. When you get a quiet, harmless nudge to do something, stand up from your desk, look out the window at a bird, text a specific person, drink a glass of water, just act on it. And most importantly, take a moment to notice exactly how it feels to honor that inner voice.
Notice the subtle sense of relief. Notice the physical alignment that comes from saying yes to your own spontaneity. By doing this, you are actively participating in the conscious creation of your physical and psychological reality. You are no longer a victim of random biology. You are the sculptor learning to work with the clay.
Reflecting on all this, I have to say, going through these chapters again, I already feel so much more connected to my physical body and my own intuition. Just the realization that they are partners, not enemies, it changes the entire landscape of daily life.
It really does.
The stiff neck isn't a glitch, it's a message. The random urge isn't a distraction, it's a breadcrumb. It is incredibly empowering to realize that the universe isn't happening to me, it's happening through me, and my body is my closest ally in that entire process.
It is a profound paradigm shift. It requires patience and a lot of unlearning, but the freedom it offers is unparalleled. And we are really just scratching the surface of this material. Next time, the most liberating teaching. The point of power is now. And we'll talk about the real you underneath all the shoulds, chapters 8 and 10.
I cannot wait for that. Unpacking the shoulds is going to be a huge one. But before we sign off, we want to leave you with one final provocative question to mull over as you go about your day.
We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how our bodies faithfully reflect our beliefs down to the cellular level. If our cells constantly regenerate and possess their own inner comprehension, is the physical aging process an unavoidable biological law? Or could it simply be the ultimate, deeply ingrained mass belief that we have all silently agreed to participate in?